back, fearfully and wonderfully made friends. I'm so glad you're here today, and I pray that wherever you are listening from, you are reminded that you were created on purpose for a purpose. If you're new to the Holistic Counselor podcast, make sure you go back and check out previous episodes where we dive into the beautiful intersection of faith, science, mental health, and holistic living. And if you find today's conversation helpful, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with a friend. It truly helps us reach more hearts who need encouragement and support. Today's episode is especially meaningful to me because I'm sharing part of my own growth journey as a private practice owner and introducing you to someone who has played a significant role in that journey. I first discovered Laura Long during a season when I felt completely stuck in my solo private practice. I had been grinding alone, wearing all the hats, and honestly, I was exhausted, questioning whether I could keep through the Valley therapy open or if it was time to walk away. In October, I attended the Wise Practice Summit, and it became a real turning point for me. Shortly after, I heard Whitney Owens, the founder of Wise Practice, mention Laura's name, which led me to episode 114 of the Wise Practice podcast. In that episode, Laura spoke about the fear of success, and her words stopped me in my tracks. Something deep inside me stirred. A few days later, I reached out to Laura, and that decision opened the door to a whole new chapter of clarity, courage, and growth. Laura Long, LMFT, with an MBA, is a therapist with a thriving private practice based in Greenville, South Carolina. She's also a clinical supervisor, adjunct faculty instructor, and an accomplished business consultant in the mental health space. Laura has built a $1 million consulting business where she helps therapists and entrepreneurs break through mental barriers, increase their earning potential, and create work that truly matters with the people they are called to serve. She's an engaging speaker, a trusted mentor, and when she's not working, you'll often find her tending her garden or playing piano. Whether you're an intern just starting out, a therapist considering private practice, or someone simply curious about what it really takes to build a sustainable business in this field, today's conversation is for you. Today, we're diving deep into faith, finances, and the fear of success. The real conversations that don't just build businesses, but build boldness and freedom. So, wherever you are, take a deep breath, settle in, and get ready for a raw, practical, and hope filled conversation with my business coach, Laura Long. All right, girlfriend. How you
That
doing?
was quite an intro. Whew, I'm like, who wrote that? Oh, wait, I did. Thanks for
Exactly.
having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So, we're going to start with the moment that changed everything for me. All right. Episode 114 of the Wise Practice podcast, if anybody's interested, with Whitney Owens. It released on December 31st, 2024. And you said something about the fear of success. And that really hit home. I felt a conviction like I never had before. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Can you unpack what you meant by that and why it shows up right when we're on the edge of breakthrough?
Ooh, yeah. Well, first, we probably need to talk about what always comes up first is the fear of failure. And I think that, I talked about it on the podcast episode with Whitney. It's something that often comes up in my business consulting, also the classes that I teach, this fear of failure. What if I put something out into the world and it's rejected by the world, or the people that I'm trying to help really don't want it? And I've spent all this time and energy and money pouring myself into this idea or this business and it doesn't take off. But what we often don't talk about is the fear of success, which basically means what happens if this thing that I've poured so much into actually does work out? And then I'm on the hook for it.
Right.
And then I have to change, or something about me changes. Or what if the bar that right now might feel like it's on the floor. But what if the bar begins to raise and expectations and pressure are both placed on me and I'm not able to show up? That
Yeah.
would be a true failure. It's actually success. It's that fear that what if who I am fundamentally changes as a result of this thing working that I so desperately want to work?
Right.
And I think what happens is that we subconsciously will begin to pull away and we won't show up. And it sort of reinforces this belief that maybe what I have isn't even good enough to put out there. But it's
Mm,
really our fear of success that's holding us back more often than it's our fear of failure, in my opinion.
yeah, no, Laura, that makes sense. Oh, sorry, guys. I got a new doggy. His name is Bear, and you're gonna probably hear him. I'm
And
gotta
he's
trade him.
adorable.
Oh, anyway, so with the fear of success, I know when you were talking about it with Whitney, it really it really was just like, whoa, that makes more sense than the fear of failure. Because I
Mhm.
try new things all the time. I'm a creative. And Laura, as you've gotten to know me, we've been working together now for what, a couple of months now, I would
Yeah,
say.
about 3 months.
Yeah. I think it was the fear of success for me is like if I succeed, that's more responsibility.
Yes.
It's more responsibility. And more responsibility means more energy being spent.
And what if
And
I can't maintain that?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And also it's like no one ever trained us as therapists of business ownership anyway of this
Mhm.
situation. And the fear of success, like to me, was like, yeah, that's the problem. It wasn't the fear of failure because I create a lot of new things all the time and I go at
Mhm.
it. But this through the valley therapy, because this is what I've come like Laura's really good, guys. Like when I say really good, like first of all, most of you that have heard me or if you know me personally, my personality is pretty strong. And that's what my family says anyway. But she was able to really like every time my creative brain would go off into the rabbit hole or the tangent, she was able to be like, "Girl, no, come back," in a very respectful, gentle way. And that's when I knew, okay, she can work with me. She's not going to take things personal, and she allows me to be me, the true me. And at some of our sessions, it's just like, girl, and she goes, nope, just do it, say it, go ahead, be raw. Anyway, so I wanted to introduce that part of how I got to know Laura and what the fear of success was. So you worked with therapists and coaches, creatives, Christian
Mhm.
entrepreneurs across the globe.
Mhm.
All right. Why do you think so many faith-filled women struggle with money, especially when it comes to charging what they're worth or growing beyond the therapy room? And I'm going to be real honest, right before, this is weird. I forgot that this is a question. Right before we came on the show, I had my hour coaching session with her. And this was probably our fifth, is it our
Mhm.
fifth coaching session? And all of a sudden, I'm still having to deal with what was taught in me, to me, what I picked up. It's actually narratives that we pick up in life. So, again, with the question of like, why do you think so many faith-filled women struggle with money?
I think that this is such a huge question because we also need to address some of the cultural implications of charging. First of all, being women in a helping profession. For some of us who may identify with being people of color or other marginalized groups that have been on the receiving end of systemic oppression, there's a lot to unpack with that. What I would say is that as a person of faith, as a woman of faith, and as an entrepreneur, it can be so difficult to kind of separate our sense of worth and who we are from what we do for our jobs. And that's something that we had sort of talked about in the last hour is saying, okay, well, if the value of what you're providing is X number of dollars, that has nothing to do, it has no bearing on your value as a person because your value as a person is priceless and was handed to you by our Lord and Savior.
Mm.
So we need to start to separate our value and who we think of ourselves as believers, as women, as entrepreneurs, separate that out from the product or service that we are providing.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think if we can do that, then the price of what we are charging for any service or product, it becomes a lot more of an objective decision. We can just look at numbers. We can only look at, okay, this is what I need to charge in order to support my livelihood so that I can continue doing this important work and not experience burnout.
Yeah.
But we can do that much more objectively if we separate our value as people, because that value is priceless. It is inherent. It is handed to us by the Lord. That
Yeah.
is not something, whether I charge $200 an hour or $2,000 an hour, my value on this planet remains the same.
Yeah. And it's to me staying in the humility of how God made us. Because honestly, I've met some people, Laura, let me tell you, some coaches and therapists who are like, oh no, I'm $400. And then it's, you know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
the, I hate to say the full of themselves kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's under it. And I think that's the thing, being a woman who's trying to, let the last be first and the first be last and
Mm-hmm.
following the Lord. But we're also our own CEO. It's such a balance. Like
Yeah.
Laura has helped me a lot to really unpack certain thought processes that I thought I dealt with in therapy. But I never came in, they don't teach us how to be business owners or private practice owners. They really, honestly, what I've come to understand is many of the schooling that we go through is an insurance model based teaching, right? Let's
Mm-hmm.
diagnose, let's give the, here we go, and here's the insurance, and here's the code, and stuff like that. And then my how I hate to say how I was raised as a therapist, but it was most of us go into schools or into different realms. I mean, where we do our internships and stuff, that it shouldn't be, you're helping people. It should be free.
Oh,
Or,
right. Yeah. You shouldn't charge anything for helping someone else. And
right.
yet, what about how much we had to pay for our education, for our supervision, for our client contact hours after graduate school, to pay to take the licensing exam, all of those things that we also had to pay. And now we have overhead too. I do think that a lot of therapists and also, therapists who are women, who are believers, we want to come from a place of service. That's part of why we wanted to become therapists in the first place. But service doesn't mean self-sacrifice to the point of burnout,
Mm,
right? I mean, even Jesus set boundaries.
yeah.
And we are called to serve as believers, but we are not called to serve everyone. Stewardship means knowing your limits and yet still being able to make an impact.
Mhm.
But one thing that I often hear from therapists who are believers is they'll talk about, money and the mindset around that, and who am I to even charge this much, and wealth bad and I need to stay poor. Well, scripture doesn't condemn wealth, it warns against idolizing it. So I believe that you can honor God and build a thriving business at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Laura taught me, I mean, I listen a lot of podcasts, and what Laura really is working with me about is understanding that if I charge a higher fee, then that means I will have, she does. She helped me do a budget. She helped me figure out what I need to do, how many clients, so I'm not burnt out, in order to be able to have more freedom, not to more freedom to actually be with family and also to give back to my community for free.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the things that, you don't really think about because you're wanting to serve, serve, serve. And another thing that came to me while I've been working with Laura is understanding that I want to help. I want to help my people. Laura and I have talked about that a lot. But I also need to understand that sacrifice, the word sacrifice, we are taught that. Like we need to be,
Mm-hmm.
but guess what? There's only one sacrificial lamb, and that's Jesus
Mm-hmm.
Christ. And I cannot be Jesus to the human. I can try my best to act like him. That's why he came to show us the way. Right, Laura? But it's
Yeah.
like some of us, because we are in these helping fields, that's
Mhm.
what happens. We end up thinking like, oh, I got to save him. I got to save him. Oh, no matter what. Oh, I'm going to stay up for hours at a time. Or,
Mhm.
I'm going to be with my client for 50 minutes, but I'm going to spend another hour doing more work for that client because we kind of touched on that too a little. And Laura really knows how to not discipline me, but
Well, discipline, if we're going back to the roots of the Bible, I mean, discipline means to teach.
yes.
Jesus had disciples, he taught. So discipline doesn't necessarily mean punishment. I'm helping you to practice some amount of self-discipline, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she's giving me concepts that I've never heard of, or I've heard of them, but I've never put into practice. It's the accountability. I think from day
Hmm.
one, I'm like, Laura, I know me, I know how it is. I can learn, 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 and it's analysis paralysis,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
But Laura's my accountability. She's like, okay, girl, I mean, this is where we're at. And then she knows how to come back to where I was after I go into these rabbit holes. And she gets me out of the rabbit hole and go, okay, focus,
Hmm.
focus.
Right.
So, what practical tools or mindset shifts have helped your clients move from burnout or invisibility to clarity and confidence?
Mm. Now, when I was thinking about my answer to this question, I was curious if you thought it would be more helpful to talk or to speak to other therapists or those that I've served in a more consulting realm or actual clients, because I do offer in my therapy practice, burnout recovery strategies. So I feel like they're similar or there are some similarities, but there are also some stark differences too, depending on who's listening to this episode.
Oh, I honestly think that I have both. I have, regular humans that are just searching for help with
Mhm.
burnout. Because I deal with a lot of women that are burnout, and girl, I was burned out, and not,
Mhm.
burnout. Let's talk about burnout
Yeah.
for a second, because I saw burnout when I was doing that conference that I was telling you about through my other company, you know? So with burnout, it's like, what does that actually mean? And how do you help people with burnout?
So there is compassion fatigue, which as therapists, I would imagine you and I both have had our fair share of experiencing. When you have so much empathy and you spend day in and day out with people hearing their stories, and some stories are extremely traumatic, without proper supervision or case consultation or just colleague support, we can experience this. It feels somewhat similar to burnout, but compassion fatigue for me is a little bit more like I am just so, I call it crispy. Like I just feel so crispy. I don't have anything left in my cup to give to other people because it's been a full week of just hearing these horrible, horrible stories and
Yeah.
sitting with people in that. Um, to me, compassion fatigue, it can last a long time, but personally, in my experience, it's been more short term. I had a really, really rough week or even a rough month. When I was working at agencies, yeah, it would extend and take maybe several weeks of me having these feelings where I really don't have the empathy, but to me, it felt more like maybe an apathy of sorts.
Yeah.
Just that I was so crispy, I had nothing left to give. I had used up everything that I had. So that is for, most people who are in professions where they're helping others, whether it's nurses, counselors, members of the clergy, they can experience compassion fatigue. To me, that's slightly different from burnout. I don't know if we're just like splicing words here, but for me, burnout is more of an extended period of emotional exhaustion, feeling numb, even cynical, completely disconnected from the work and from the people that we used to be excited to serve. And also, in addition to that, having this significant reduced feeling of accomplishment in our lives.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to even want to do the things that maybe we know give us joy, things that are outside of our profession. So for me, being an avid gardener, if I'm going through a period of burnout, I'm not even looking forward to going out and spending time in my garden. So things that don't even have to do with my profession, I'm dreading and avoiding.
Right.
So to me, burnout is much more serious, much more insidious than compassion fatigue, which for me is a little bit more easily identifiable within myself. I can clearly see that I have not done a lot of self care over a period of time. I've been having some really heavy sessions. I have not sought supervision or any sort of consultation, and I'm starting to feel a bit isolated. So, that to me is easier to get out of because I know that the antidote is connection.
Right. Yeah.
I need to call a friend, whether it's another therapist. I need to reach out to my old supervisor. Um, Maybe I need to listen to some podcasts. Maybe I just need to get out in some fresh air and do some garden work. Like I just need to get my hands dirty,
Right.
going to the gym, spending really quality time with my family. These are all things that over time, they do have a cumulative effect and can help me work through any sort of compassion fatigue. Burnout, on the other hand, the recovery process I have experienced and also have helped others through can take a lot longer.
Yes.
And it sometimes does require a bit of a backup and punt mentality.
Yeah.
Sometimes it requires us to spend a season doing something completely different or exploring other interests. So it's not so easy as just, we'll go get a massage and take a long weekend. So
Mm.
those are techniques that maybe can assist with compassion fatigue, but not so much with burnout, because by the time someone is experiencing true burnout, they don't even have the energy to do some of the most basic self-care things that would have helped them if it was compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
So really walking through this with a professional would be very helpful. I would say, to anyone who's in that space of feeling really burned out, we're talking beyond crispy, right? This is,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble even going to meetings that I know are important, doing things that bring me joy that aren't even related to my profession. I cannot bring myself to do it. I'm cynical. I'm resentful of my clients or customers, people I work with. I'm really snappy and irritable. These are all potential signs of burnout. And so, what I would say your first call needs to be to a clinician who can help you.
Yeah.
A therapist who maybe specializes in burnout recovery, someone who works with either if you're an entrepreneur or if you're someone in a helping field or a medical profession, finding a therapist who is highly skilled and trained, such as yourself, in
And
working with
you.
people and
I'm in
me.
Florida. She's in South
I'm in South
Carolina.
Carolina.
Yeah.
Um, and so, working with that person, part of the reason why it's so helpful to have a therapist outside of the fact that we just have knowledge and skills and training and background and all that is that we have no skin in the game. So, what I might tell you to do might be different from what your loved one might tell you to do because your loved one maybe wants to make sure that you stay in the profession that you've worked so
Yeah.
hard for, that you're helping to support the family. But what if your burnout recovery plan includes you taking a season off or, even being able to take, an extended period of time away, but needing to be creative and coming up with solutions, possibly to generate revenue in the meantime. If we're going to take a sabbatical, what are we going to do to ourselves and our families? And so being able to think through different solutions and alternatives, it's going to require someone who can be creative with you, but who also isn't going to benefit or not from
Right.
whatever decision that you make. So I think that that separation can really help
Right.
you as a client to be a lot more honest about what's going on with you without worrying that you're dumping all of this on a loved one or your spouse or
Exactly.
something like that.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
because those pressures, you might not want to put more, you feel like a burden at a point too.
Mm-hmm.
With burnout, you're like, it's the weirdest thing that happens. It's like so many
Mm-hmm.
emotions and thoughts that come together in like a tornado.
Well, yeah, and I think if I can speak to being a woman of faith who may also be experiencing burnout, I think there's a huge amount of guilt that comes from that. There's a comparison that, who am I to even feel this way when I have all these other things going well in my life? I don't deserve to even feel burned out.
Right.
If it's someone who is caregiving for small children and they're experiencing burnout, they might look at themselves and say, well, at least my children are healthy. Who am I to complain?
Right. Or they're comparing themselves, like, because I've had that conversation with you, Laura, because if, like, I'm second generation here and you have immigrant parents that might have put it on you saying, trauma, you guys have no clue. You're a spoiled
Mm-hmm.
American. You're a spoiled American.
Yeah.
And so if you're raised in that mentality, oh my gosh, but I'm feeling these things. I'm feeling these things. But
Mhm.
then you feel the guilt and the shame of like, oh my goodness, no, you're right. Like they had it really bad over in their third world
Mhm.
country. And oh,
Yeah.
so it's so many different layers, so many different layers. And that's the thing. Whoever's listening and you're starting, if this is resonating with you, it is going layer by layer and understanding
Yeah.
you're not alone, no matter what.
Absolutely.
You're not alone. There are practical tools and things. Do you have any favorite like books or podcasts or resources that you like recommend over and over when you're dealing with a client?
Yeah. What I've found is that often giving clients more to do when they're in a season of burnout can
Hmm.
exacerbate burnout.
Okay.
So, although it would be easy for me to say, yeah, read these, two books and they'll change your life. First of all, I don't think any single book except the Bible is going to change your life. But second
Amen.
of all, it's just giving you more busy work. It's more things that you need to do that you'll probably avoid and then feel guilt and shame having
Hmm.
avoided those things. For me, it's more about just getting centered and getting regrounded. So that might just look like getting a new devotional. It might look like, so Melody Beattie wrote a book called Journey to the Heart. It is so good. It's more of a spiritual devotional than a religious one per se.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have a year attached to it. You can start at any date. And every single time I open that book and I read the corresponding date, what her entry is for that date, it is so life-giving. Her way of giving me a newfound perspective on things, of validating where I'm at, of giving myself compassion and love where I am, is
Yeah.
so great. So I actually read a devotional every morning and I read Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart, which is also a devotional of sorts. It's just somewhat separate. But I say if someone can just go back to basics,
Yeah.
what is one thing, taking a baby step, one thing that you would like to do for yourself today that maybe you've let fall out, something you used to derive joy from, but how can we make it so small of a new thing that you're adding that it doesn't feel like 100-pound weight?
Right. Yeah, because some of us, we go in, especially if we're high functioning type A. Yeah, hello. I think that's,
Me,
yeah, me too.
pot meat kettle.
Where we realize like it's so much. I mean, it's a gift. It's a gift to be like Martha. But I think it is
Mhm.
also understanding we must be Mary. We must become like Mary
Yeah,
and that's what it's the small step. To me, I tell people, when was the last time you just sat and listened to a bird? They're like,
yeah.
what? Or look for a butterfly or a bug. And they're like, that
Mhm.
isn't, I'm not 4 years old. I'm not a preschool. I got bills to pay. I got,
Mhm.
and I'm like, that's part of what you need to do. And I'm going to hold you accountable next time. I
Mhm.
mean, and it's the smallest, tiniest thing.
Yes, being out in nature make it's wonders. Now, none of these things that you and I talk about today are going to be overnight fixes, but neither is burnout. Burnout didn't happen overnight. So why would we expect, in our American way to just do one thing and it fixes all of it?
Yeah. That's one
Um,
thing I realize, Laura, when I work with a lot of women from different countries when they come to America and they hire me and they feel they're like, this country, this is all it is. It's about work, 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 work. And I'm like, I know it is. But when you're raised in it, like, I was raised in New
mhm.
York. That's all I mean, New York by a single immigrant mom. It's
Yeah.
a fast pace. And then I was moving to the country. Florida to me was the country
Wow.
back in 1982. It
Hmm.
was, there were alligators in the woods. And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
So, you know,
Rest can
that's
feel,
it.
yeah,
Rest.
rest can feel unproductive, especially if we have conditioned ourselves and have allowed ourselves to be conditioned by a society or a working environment that only rewards hard work.
That's it. The guilt of, I never was a napper. The only time I've napped maybe 3 times in my life, or eight, and that was because I was really super sick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, doesn't that go to show, though, that your body needs the rest? And it was your physical and your mental, emotional, and spiritual are all interconnected. You got
Mm-hmm.
to listen to all parts of you And
Yeah.
that's how God made us. So, you know, as someone who's now my business coach, what stood out to you when we started working together?
You're fire, girl. You have such a blazing fire under you at all times.
Oh, I know. And then it could consume me, and then I'm crispy.
No, so more seriously, I would say from the moment we first met, just for a basic consultation, just to get to know one another, I could see this passion that you have to serve women. And maybe there was a little bit of a hesitation because you have worked with men and have really enjoyed that. And you're like, I don't want to limit myself because I really love working with men. But when we actually just peel back the onion layers of who we love serving, it's some version of ourselves from years ago. And so when you talk about some of these people that you have served and the ideas, the creative ideas that you have to do more, whether it's podcast episodes or writing on your blog or teaching a seminar or a workshop, you are always coming from this place of service
Mm,
because you want people to change their lives. And when you hired me, it wasn't because you're like, oh, I just want to make $1 million, which also would be fine, by the way, if that was
yeah.
your goal.
She's working on that with me. So is my husband.
Yeah. If anything, for you, it's the opposite. It's like, how do I serve more people?
Mhm.
How do I make myself more available without the burnout,
Yeah,
without becoming crispy? So I
right.
think that that's something that really stood out to me from the very beginning is that you wanted to figure out what is the most creative way that I can clone myself and do it quickly. Like you have this sense of urgency about you in
Mm,
wanting to help other people and wanting people to experience what true healing is for them.
yeah.
And you can't buy that. You know, that's not something I can really teach if someone doesn't already have that fire within them.
Wow. Wow. I never heard someone describe me like that, but thank you. All
Yeah,
right.
you're welcome.
No, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. I think Laura and I kind of have the same personality in a way because she's a fiery creative as well. And like I said, when I came and I, said some things to just test her and she was like, "Oh no, here." And then she snatched it right back and was able to go back at it. And I'm like, "Okay." And then she's got so much wisdom that I'm like, "Oh, I'm so hungry." And she also knows when I start going, what about this? What about that? What about this? And then it's called the zoomies. I zoom like this new dog.
Like
He
your
zooms.
dog.
He zooms everywhere. She's just able to really get back to, all right, no, here's what we stated. Let's get back to this. And that's exactly what I need. So let's talk about, you're going to be the keynote speaker at the Wise Practice Summit in October, correct? It's in October.
Yes.
Why is that event so impactful, especially for Christian therapists or those walking the line
Mhm.
between clinical work and their calling?
Yeah. Well, I used this word earlier and it's coming back to me, but really it's about connection
Mhm.
because whether it's compassion fatigue, the comparison trap, feeling really isolated in private practice, feeling like, oh my gosh, what am I even doing with my business? Because I never learned this. I never got this training in grad school. Like, what am I even doing? Having a group of people who are not necessarily like-minded, because I think there's so much value in diversity, but having this one thing, the idea that we are all on a faith journey, whether we practice openly as Christian counselors or whether faith is something that we hold inside, but maybe we still practice from a place of integrity, we may or may not just say outwardly that we are Christian based. Either way, when you get a group of clinicians all together with that same common thread, who are very diverse in other ways, that level of connection is so intimate and there's so much more depth to it than simply getting a group of clinicians together or clinicians who are in private practice. When you add that faith element, it really opens up the door to have some pretty difficult conversations
Yeah.
that are so meaningful and so deep.
Yeah.
And
No.
that's why I love that summit.
Yeah. I mean, I went to my first one this past October, and that's when that guy Neil Samudri, or I don't know how to say his last
Mhm.
name. Well, how do you say his
I don't know
last
how to
name?
say it either.
Oh, okay. Well, he was the, I still go back to that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think my listeners have heard me talk about this Wise Practice Summit and what happened there and how that shifted everything for me and it wasn't, it was just a conviction. It was a conviction that came over me at that point after he spoke. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it's
Hmm.
true. Like through the Valley Therapy, God gave me that. God gives us these things, right? And
Hmm.
through him in our weakness, he's strong. And that's the what was the word we were using earlier?
Regroup,
Recalibrate.
recalibrate,
Yes,
all the
recalibrate.
re words.
Yeah, recalibrate into the why and the why we do this. Why is this important? What is like my mission statement and my vision statement? I think I have one for every company, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so this summit though, it's like what's compared to other conferences, there's so many out there. What is
Hmm.
really different about this one?
I would say because everyone who comes to this summit is, even if they aren't necessarily faith-based, they're willing to integrate and have those conversations around faith. And it's not something that we shy away from. So things like how to have a profitable practice. There are plenty of conferences and workshops that a therapist could attend to learn how to have a profitable practice. That's not new. But when you add that element of faith in there, then we
Mm,
can go much deeper and talk about, well, what does the Bible say? Or why does one feel guilty when we start talking about charging our rates? And how do we deal with that internal dissonance that might exist as believers when we are wanting to be profitable and also serve? So it does allow and opens up the floor to have really integral conversations around how do we operate a practice in a way that still aligns with who we are as
right.
believers, or as people that are just questioning their faith? How do we navigate this very intimate thing of being a therapist in private practice who gets in there with clients and has really hard conversations? How can we create a space that feels, even if it doesn't always feel safe, we feel like we can be brave in
Yeah.
those conversations. So whenever I've been to the summit and we're just having, maybe there's a break during a workshop or at lunch or at breakfast, clinicians are coming together and having really hard conversations, and they just feel so much more robust and meaningful than simply what is the next big marketing strategy, or what's the trendy thing to do to, build your practice, or, how do I do SEO? Like all of those things, which are valid and important things to discuss, but when we can do it under the umbrella of integrating our faith, whatever that looks like, and hearing other people's stories,
Right.
that connection you feel leaving that, and is similar to the connection that you felt. And we can be convicted when we hear things at these conferences, but it allows us an open platform to discuss them with other people there, knowing that we're not going to be shamed for what our beliefs are or
Yeah.
aren't, but
Yeah.
it's a more open exploration of
Right.
faith.
Yeah, it's all different denominations. This is what I
Hmm.
love. It's not just like one denomination and it just and understanding psychology, that's what I love. It's theology and psychology all mixed together
Hmm.
and
Yes.
respecting where each human being that attends is at.
Hmm.
It wasn't overly, because I've gone through Christian conference, like women of faith conferences and stuff like that. That's one thing. But it's hard for us therapists because, I don't know if you've had this happen, Laura, in your, time as a therapist, but you have a lot of churches out there um, who say what we do, especially with psychology, right? Or being
Hmm.
licensed, it goes against the word. I mean, I know I've had that experience or people saying those things as well. And to me, I'm like, wait, all good things come from above. And just because we might have studied Freud or other,
Hmm.
modalities and philosophies doesn't mean that it's we take these things, but we still take, I think, the thought captive to Christ.
Yeah.
So how have you dealt with that, or have you dealt with things like that before, where it's like I'm trying to break stigma in the churches because there's a lot of people
Mhm.
in those four walls that are suffering with mental health issues, but they're
Mhm.
saying you're not having enough faith, you're being, have enough prayer. You see what I mean? They don't get into the anxiety and depression or the actual clinical diagnosis. It's such
Yeah.
a balancing act for us. What say you?
Yeah. What say you? Well, I think, being able to speak to it with a client. So if I have a therapy client coming in and they are a person of faith, allowing them to share what's happened for them and how that impacted them without necessarily inserting my thoughts or opinions yet. But really being a place for them to just share in any way how they may have experienced injury or trauma from their church, and then offering them that clear support and validation if it's helpful for them, even opening up the Bible and seeing, okay, what does it actually say about that? Because your pastor may have said that taking medication is of Satan, is evil. Well, let's see where it might say that. It doesn't. Just sneak peek. It doesn't say that. Um, and so sometimes just speaking truth to them. Other times it really is just being a place for them to be able to share where, there is a little bit of what we call in our field a power differential between a
Mm,
therapist and a client. So the client may defer to something that the therapist may say, even if the client disagrees with it, because there's this sense of power that the therapist holds. And so I'm very aware of that power differential. And when I'm meeting with a client who might be sharing some of these really awful experiences or even traumatic experiences they've had with a faith-based institution, I try to come from a one down position. I am not the keeper of all knowledge when it comes to the Bible or Christianity or any faith for that matter. And so I really try to honor the fact that even though this is a space where there might be that power differential and maybe they're looking to me for answers,
mhm.
sometimes just sitting with them in that space and not
Yeah,
trying to be the person who has all the answers, but
exactly.
validating their emotional experience and understanding that their experience as a person, their lived experience, I will never understand too. And so that's something that I think, I'm able to at least try to model humility and try to model what Jesus would do in those situations. Just coming from a place of openness and love.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The unconditional positive regard.
Which we are taught,
Uh,
but not everyone
Understands it.
practices that. Yeah.
Yes, right. And you're spot on. Like I feel when we are in front of the client is to sit with them, like you said, and give them
Mhm.
the space to really get to know themselves in a very safe
Yeah.
place,
Hmm.
online or in person. Like it's
Yeah.
just about listening and trying to understand their why of what was happening or what is happening, because the answers are inside of our clients. I
Hmm.
mean, Laura, like you're a guide. You're, to me a guru, but you're in what you do. But I know that word, somebody's going to come after me on that
I
word, but
know. That's all right. That's all right. We get
hey, it's the attention of my heart. It is. Like, what's the attention of my heart? I'm just being funny. Anyway, but it's true though. She's got this wisdom that was given to her that she worked hard for. And now I am seeking that wisdom so she can help me become a better therapist and a better, guess what? I might go into the coaching full time or and she's helping me with all those things. And this is why I hired her and I pay her the big bucks
it.
because she's worth it. She is. And that's the thing she's starting to help me understand that I'm worth it too.
Yeah.
I'm worth it too. And see, I'm about to cry
Yeah.
because I have to still do therapy with my therapist. Laura's my business coach, not my therapist. But it is, and for somebody that's listening and saying, well, I can't afford any of this stuff. I can't afford a therapist. I can't afford a business coach. I can't afford anything at all. What would you say to them?
Well, they're here right now, so they're getting value from this. And part of why you and I both charge the rates that we do in our practices is to enable us to spend this hour together and give so much value. Now, I didn't hold anything back today, but neither you nor I are getting paid for this time.
Right.
And we were able to generously give our time because our financial needs are being met elsewhere. And if we charged little to nothing for therapy, we would be spread so thin that we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, you're right.
So, for those who truly are in a position where therapy feels so far away for them, so far away from their grasp, I would say thank God for people like you
Mm, thanks.
who are putting this knowledge out and not expecting a dime, and you're not holding anything back either. So there is still so much to learn, so much to gain, even from free tools out there.
Yeah.
And by you continuing to explore yourself as a Christian woman, as an entrepreneur, as a therapist, wearing all these different hats, you will eventually get to a place where you also have so much time and energy and resources to give back.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to come from this place of understanding the value of the services that you provide and the years and even decades of hard, hard work that it took to get you here.
Yeah.
And there's value there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, but see, those are the narratives that I've had to work through, not only with Laura, but with my own
Mhm.
personal therapist and on my own. Like, I do pick up tools in between, even though I am a therapist trying to give information out or challenge, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mhm.
challenging people and their thought process and stuff. It's like we're all responsible for ourselves. So
Yeah.
we have to choose even to do the one baby step that Laura was talking about earlier. What have
Well,
I? Go ahead.
go, if I could say one more thing to that, just
Yeah,
it really demonstrates the added value that you are then able to offer to your clients because you do so much of your own work in your own time. You pay for your own therapy, you pay for your own business consulting, right?
yeah,
And you are learning yourself so much about how to be a better entrepreneur, a better believer, a better wife, etc. And you're then able to dispel that knowledge to those who work with you.
right.
And that's so valuable as well. The fact that you do so much outside of therapy to continue learning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for all of us because that's the stuck feeling that many that are in survival mode, right?
Hmm.
If you think about many of the clients that I know I work with feel stuck. That's why they hire us in crisis,
Hmm.
right? They feel stuck and they're in survival mode. They're exhausted, undercharging, and unsure if they should keep going. You
Hmm.
know, what would you say to a woman who's about to give up on her business or worse, herself?
Well, if she is a spiritual person or someone of faith, I think the first place she needs to go is within and to have some quiet reflection time and not just like 10 minutes. But when I was experiencing burnout and having a lot of thoughts about what I should do with my next steps, I went on a silent retreat. It was just a full day. It wasn't a whole weekend or a week, but it was an entire day where I spoke to nobody. I was in the middle of the mountains. I had a little tent that was set up for me. And all I did was journal and pray that whole day. And I cried. I cried a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and from there, I did get so much clarity. And it wasn't necessarily the answer or answers that I wanted. What I wanted was to just keep going and have it be fine, right? But it
Yeah.
ended up, I had to dismantle a lot of things, a lot of relationships, um, an entire business. Like there was a lot that I had to do to unravel that. And now I'm here on the other side of it saying, oh, I'm so glad that happened. And I'm so glad it happened in the timing that it did because
Yeah.
God's timing is perfect.
Amen.
So
Amen.
looking backwards, the timing was great. At the
Yeah.
time, it didn't feel that way. So I would say to a person or to a woman who's battling anything like that, to take some time in quiet reflection. If they have someone they trust who's maybe a clergy or a member of the clergy or a therapist, just someone to sit with them in this really dark spot that they might find themselves in. But the answer, like you pointed out a few minutes ago, the answer is most likely already within them somewhere.
Mhm.
It's not going
Right.
to come from just, talking it out with your best friend over coffee. They're
No.
going to give you a lot of ideas,
Right.
but that might just be more confusing.
Yeah.
I think going out in nature, like you said,
Yes.
just sitting on a park bench
Yeah. And
and looking around.
crying.
Yeah,
So people
let it
think,
out.
yes, people think crying, to me, it's actually your system regulating.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
It
And
is.
and then being in nature, this is what God has created. All of this,
Yeah.
especially if it's created by God. Not
Mm-hmm.
man-made, but like you go into a park or a beach or wherever it is, your backyard, and
Mm-hmm.
sitting still because many of us, especially in a westernized culture, do not know how to sit still and breathe.
Nope.
And breath was the first thing that God gave us. It all makes sense. If you really look at Genesis therapeutically,
Hmm.
it
Yeah,
right? It
that's mind
really,
blowing. Yeah.
yeah, it is mind blowing when you sit still and whatever comes up for you, that is where you have to work on.
Yeah.
And it's
That's where the clarity can come in.
right. It's the surrender.
Hmm.
What was the word you just used? Not untangling. Was it untangling? No.
Maybe. Sounds good. I'll take it.
No, but the
Dismantle.
dismantle. This is it.
Yeah.
Like you're dismantling things, thought processes that are trying to get your attention. This is why you feel stuck, or this is why
Hmm.
the tension in your body. And you have to surrender. And surrendering means opening up both hands and just understanding that God is the one in control. We try to listen, us type A's, we try that is why we get so stuck in things or whatever, or if we've had our own childhood trauma or we
Hmm.
come from a space that was very painful, right? We have to work through that pain. You got to feel it to heal it and then move forward and learn from it because you're going to keep doing the same thing over and over because you haven't learned the lesson yet for yourself.
So true. We will just, take control and white knuckle our way through something. But what you're saying about surrendering, God often leads us in steps, not leaps. So we
Yes.
have to start from a place of surrender and obedience, knowing and trusting and having faith that the clarity will come. But we have to let go of the reins. Yeah.
That's hard. That's hard when we're so used to holding on really, really, really tight. And like, to me now, I'm just picturing me on a horse with the reins really, really tight and going as fast as I can.
Thinking that once we let go, that's when everything falls apart. So we have to
Right.
hold on really tight.
Yes.
That's
Right.
where we start to feel the burnout,
Yes.
is
Yes.
holding on that tightly.
And so, but I think Laura was just talking about the dark night of the soul.
Hmm.
And I know I've experienced it as well. And in that, now when I look back at that, I'm grateful for it because that is what taught me how to now be still and be okay with the stillness because I didn't like being still before.
I once read that, people like you and I, when we get into those spaces, it's almost like you're in the car and you've got radio on, the AC on high, you've got people talking in the back, and it's just there's so much noise, but we become accustomed to the noise of our own minds.
Mm.
And once we shut all that down, once we turn off the proverbial radio and once we turn off the AC and there's no one in the car, it can be extremely disorienting to be in that silence because
Mhm.
we have become so used to putting noise in our day-to-day lives. We doom scroll, we distract ourselves, we watch TV, we do anything we can to silence what's happening in our minds.
Yes.
But if we actually can get rid of all of the distractions and go out in nature or be silent, take some time to pray or meditate, it's very, uh, like I said, disorienting. It can create a lot of stress at first because we have become used to just making it louder so I don't have to hear it.
Or
And
feel
when,
it.
or feel it, right. And then when we're
Hmm.
quiet, that's start to receive a little bit. And sometimes they're just very gentle nudges towards something. But that's where clarity, the seeds of clarity come in those little gentle nudges. We just have to receive them and have faith that whatever those nudges
Mm.
are coming from God and ask that He make it known to us that
Right.
these steps are ones that He wants us to take.
Yes. Yes. Not yes. It
Yeah.
is sitting still. And that's the thing for people that are in high levels of stress in their careers or even motherhood. I work with
Mm-hmm.
stay-at-home moms where they feel like they're not accomplishing anything. And we have to reframe that because that's one of the hardest jobs is to be a mom,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And to take care. And it's just, yeah, I'm going to just say the cliche thing of putting the oxygen mask, the
Mm-hmm.
plane's going down, put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Yes.
It is, the word self-care, we're taught that that's selfish. Or if we
Mm-hmm.
take time for ourselves, it is, no, we have things to do. We have to take care of, other people all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to take care of you. It's okay to be still and breathe. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of the things I'm pretty sure you too, Laura, but I know the things that I try to help my clients with, they're free.
Yeah.
I
You
mean,
don't have to
I'm not
pay a bunch of
free.
money. Yeah.
I'm
You're
not
far for
free.
free.
I
You're priceless. Your therapy is not free.
know. But you know what yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like the tool set or the things, the steps that we give clients, they have to start understanding. It's getting back to just that stillness and that understand. This is probably why you love gardening and so do I. Gardening is just to me one of the most amazing things. And I have clients who are like, "Oh, I kill plants all the time." I'm like,
So do
"No,
I. It's
it's just understanding like it's a living thing,
Mhm.
you
And they're
know?"
resilient too.
And they are. And so are we. And we learn to be
Hmm.
resilient. And we teach that. That's, I know
Yes.
you teach that, and I know I teach that too, that we
Hmm.
teach our clients how to be resilient because that's important, especially the
Hmm.
way the world's going right now.
Yeah. A lot of my clients actually are resilient already. They just never realized it. So sometimes it requires me to point out all the times in their life
Yeah.
where they they learned and practiced resiliency. And it gives them
Yeah.
this newfound appreciation for where they've come.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. That's wonderful. All right. So one more question about being an entrepreneur, just because I have you here and maybe someone else will want to know this. You know, you've helped people launch $1 million brands and people just trying to make their first 500 bucks. What's something you wish every heart-led entrepreneur would stop doing and something that they should start doing immediately?
Oof. I think they should stop trying to do too many things at the same time. That probably doesn't surprise you.
She got me on that one.
But that wasn't to you, that was to all of them.
I know. But
Like,
that's one of the things that I realized, like, okay, yeah, you're right. Because yeah,
hmm.
all right, yeah.
And remember, you're a heart-led entrepreneur who seeks to be of service and who seeks to help. If that is your goal as a heart-led entrepreneur, then the way to that is to focus, laser focus on one thing at a time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not to spread yourself so thin that you're running yourself ragged doing all of the things, but none of them are gaining any traction. And no one's, there's no eyes or ears on anything that you're putting out into the world. And you're frustrated and you're starting to get crispy.
yeah,
That's not the way for a heart led entrepreneur to serve. The way
yeah,
to serve is to do what they do well and to focus on one thing at a time and getting that really, really good and solid
yeah,
so that it frees up a disproportionate amount of time, energy, money, resources to help other people who need it, who may not be able to get that help.
yeah.
And you're
It
doing
is.
that. You are doing that.
That's because I have you, Laura. If I didn't have, this is why I hired you because I realized like I needed the accountability, and that's it. That's it too. Like being in a solo practice is hard, and there's many of us that come out of being either in a group or in community mental health, and we're wanting to do this solo private practice, and we don't know where to start or how to start. And to me, and it costs money. Like I'm not gonna lie, it costs. But I realized like this is. I was going to pay either way. I was either going to be really burnt out and lose everything, or I'm going to pay Laura to really help me when we meet and get me focused. And she is like, she did that one thing at a time. Every time I'm like, I want to do this. And she's like, all right, girl, nope, let's go back because we need each other. We're human beings. We're meant
Mhm.
to be in community. We're not, no matter where you are, entrepreneur, not entrepreneur, therapist, not therapist, whatever it is, you're doing fine, you're not doing fine. We still need community.
Yeah.
We
We're
do.
social creatures.
Yes, we do. We are. So to close out, what's your hope or prayer for the woman listening right now?
I hope, just to piggyback off of what you were just saying, I hope that the woman listening here can find community somewhere, even if that's with one other person. If she's feeling beaten down, lonely, even if she's surrounded by a bunch of people and a huge family, but just feels so isolated, I hope that she can take one step today to build a community.
Yeah.
And that can be a therapist, it could be a friend that she's lost touch with, It could be inviting someone to church with her.
Mhm.
But yeah, building that community is the absolute first step
Yeah, I
for
agree.
her.
Yeah, for sure. It's building that command. Some people are like, I don't know how. Well, you know what? There's Eventbrite. Find something that you like, photography, or cooking, I don't, or something like that. Or go to your, every Sunday, if you don't go to church, find a church. Go to different churches. Please make it Bible believing church, not a cult. And sorry.
Love that disclaimer.
Yeah. Or, there's so many volunteer opportunities, just a place, but you're not meant to do this life alone. Whoever's listening, you are not meant to do this life alone. So, is there any final words, anything else you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to thank you for having me in this conversation. It re-energized me as well. So I do hope that others listening gained something from it. But I just wanted to tell you, Diana, that I have gained something from this conversation, and I appreciate the time.
Oh, Laura, I can't wait to meet you in person. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to the Wise Practice Summit.
In
So, and you're the
October,
keynote.
I am the
I
keynote.
know. I'm so excited. All right. For everyone that's listening, don't forget to trust in the Lord, guard your heart, and renew your mind. Bye. And now for the disclaimer to make sure you understand that you are responsible for you. The content provided on the Holistic Counselor podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of any professional organizations with which I am affiliated. Call your doctor, 911, or 988 immediately if you have a medical emergency. The Holistic Counselor podcast does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the podcast. Reliance on any information provided by the Holistic Counselor podcast, guests appearing on the podcast at the invitation of the Holistic Counselor podcast, or other listeners to the podcast is solely at your own risk. Confidentiality notice. If you engage with the Holistic Counselor podcast by commenting or posting and are a client, please be aware that you may be revealing information that could compromise your confidentiality. Please remember that disclosing your identity or personal details can be linked to your clinical material. As a therapist, I am bound by confidentiality and will not respond to any disclosures of this type on this podcast. I am committed to upholding the ethics and confidentiality of the therapeutic relationship, which extends to all forms of communication in accordance with the laws and professional guidelines that govern mental health professionals. I want you to know that your privacy is of utmost importance, and you are responsible for protecting it when interacting on this platform or any other public forum. Thank you.